Hello, I am Cheyenne Meadows, and I'm the High Ability Learning Specialist at the Nebraska Department of Education. Coming up on 2 years that I've been in this position, so that's really exciting. And I see a lot of new names that I've not seen before, and I see some names and faces that I have seen at some of these events before, and so that's really great. And I'm so excited that all of you took time out of your evening to be here. And today we're going to be talking about parent and family advocacy. Something that I get a lot is I get questions from parents, families, caregivers of high ability students about how to approach schools and how to best advocate for the needs of their HAL children. And so this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And so I would love to share my knowledge with you guys. And if at any time you have questions about anything, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or you can drop it in the chat and I will see it as well. So whenever I do one of these family events, I like to start with the characteristics of high ability students. We all see them, especially if you have a HAL child, or even if you're a HAL teacher or a classroom teacher, we all see these characteristics in our children. They have that ability to learn quickly and everything seems really easy to them. A lot of times, especially at younger ages, they're verbally proficient compared to their peers. So maybe they're using higher level vocabulary, or they're able to sustain conversation for longer than their same age peers. A lot of times because of that, they tend to relate to older children or adults. So they may prefer to hang out with older brother and siblings, or they may follow the teacher around and talk to them all day because they're looking for somebody who wants to talk about what they want to talk about on the same level as them. Sometimes they can have that really unusual imagination that making up really complex games on the playground, or telling really vivid stories. They often memorize easily, and that means that they can get really bored with skill and drill. So math facts, spelling words, those different kinds of things, they absorb that knowledge quickly, and it seems like they memorize it a little bit faster. A lot of times they're really deeply interested in a specific area, or they're interested in a variety of things. Maybe they go really deeply into rocket ships and that's what they're really interested in, or maybe they are never on something for more than 10 minutes and they like to diversify their interests. A lot of times they're really creative or inventive, especially when it comes to problem solving. Our high ability students are often really sensitive and have a high level of empathy. And so there are kiddos who may emotionally seem to overreact to things, or have that really strong sense of justice. And they're often very curious. And so they ask a lot of questions. They ask a lot of why. So those are just some general characteristics that we see out of our high ability kids. And unfortunately, they can have manifestations in the classroom that aren't always desirable. And so sometimes we see that our students are so bored and they don't understand why they have to do their homework. They may refuse to do it just because they think it's pointless, or they don't understand why they have to do 7 problems when 7 more problems when they've already got it. They may have difficulty changing topics. You may experience that in the household, or if you're a teacher, you may experience that in the classroom. They can also become really impatient, especially because a lot of times they move at this really fast rate. And so they may become impatient with others, and they may also become impatient with their peers if their peers aren't picking up on something as fast as they are, or they may not understand why somebody isn't ready to move on, or those different kinds of things. Sometimes they question adults, actually kind of frequently question adults. And it's not always because they're insubordinate or anything like that. A lot of times they really just want to know why they're doing what they're doing, and or they want clarification. And so some of that can be seen as obstinate behavior. A lot of times, again, they've got that heightened level of sensitivity, and so it may be perceived that they overreact to situations that we see as minor, but to them are actually a really big deal. They can be really stubborn, especially when they decide to draw their line in the sand, or that they're right. They can become a little bit stubborn. In peer settings, sometimes they can be bossy or dominant in conversation, especially in group work settings, especially like if they're paired together doing group work, they would just, you know, like, I'll do it, I got it, I understand, I'll get it done in 5 minutes and then we'll be all done. Or they're giving directions to this really great game that they want to play that they made up, but nobody else is following. And so, or they have that really big vocabulary and others see that as intimidating or kind of see them as a more of a know-it-all. And a lot of times they talk with the teacher. So they're that kid that follows the teacher around and asks questions and wants to talk to them because they're looking for intellectual stimulation throughout the day. So these characteristics that we see out of our high ability students, and this is, none of these characteristics are all students. Each student is totally unique and different. But these are some of the characteristics that we see that may have our high ability students referred for behavioral interventions or behavioral testing instead of referral for high ability programs. Some of these different manifestations of their high ability or their boredom or other things like that, again, may be seen as behavioral issues instead of actually just needing more stimulation in the classroom. I like Shiloh's comment. Every characteristic is a bullseye. Every time I do this, parents, I see a lot of head shaking, and that's my kid. Yep. I also can't talk about advocacy without talking about the current state of high ability learning in Nebraska. And so the rule that governs high ability learners is called Rule 3. And that was put into effect in December of 1998 by the Nebraska State Board of Education. So in Rule 3, we have a definition of high ability learner for Nebraska. And as you can see, it's a student who gives evidence of high performance, such as intellectual, creative, artistic, or in a specific academic field. And they usually require some kind of accelerated or differentiated curriculum. And with that definition, we have the statute, which is the law in the state, that districts have to identify learners with high ability, and they may provide services for those students. So by law in Nebraska, schools do not have to provide high ability services. A lot of school districts choose to. So anything that your school district does for high ability students is over and above what the law is asking them to do. Any questions? The statute, again, was from 1998, so it's a little bit older and does not require services for high ability students. So when thinking about going to school districts and talking to other people about high ability, it's important to keep in mind that the legislation is a little more loose in Nebraska than other states. Also in Rule 3, it outlines the structure for funding. Each school district does receive a certain amount of funding for high ability students. And they also have a plan that they have to make available to citizens of the district. So if you email an administrator in your district and ask them for their high ability learning plan, they should be able to provide that for you. That plan often includes the district definition of high ability learner, their procedures for identification, what services they offer if they offer them, what their training for staff looks like, and other program management pieces. So again, by law, they should be able to produce these plans for you if they are receiving funding from us. Now that we have, so that's the role of the state, and that's what we do at my level, and that's what the districts do. And so something that is super important in the lives of our high ability students is you. The role of parents and family and caregivers is so important to our students. A lot of studies show that parents are the most critical component to help their students achieve and maximize their talents and abilities. And that can be positive or negative. And home environment is so important to not only develop those academic skills, but to encourage those interpersonal skills, such as positive behavior, positive relationships, self-competence, and self-confidence. A lot of those come from school, but a lot of them come from home as well. Also, in the identification process and in the services process, you guys have so much more information about the child that the teachers may not. You hear what they say about school, you're with them on a daily basis, so you understand their needs a lot better than the school does. Also, a study from 2009 shows that whenever a gifted student is identified, their parents' perception of the educational experience was generally positive. So advocating and pushing for identification of your student, if you think your student is high ability, is super crucial to their educational experience. Also, it's really important when we think about our high ability students to have a performance orientation instead of or to not have a performance orientation instead of learning goals. So always making sure that with our high ability students, we are pushing the process and the effort versus praising the product. And we always want them to put out their best product, but it's also really important for high ability students to value the process, because a lot of times things are really easy for them. And so it's easy for them to slide under the radar and maybe not always be pushed to do their best in terms of performance. Because they're getting good grades, and we're gonna have a story about that later, which is kind of fun. Also, students often don't have any other advocates other than parents or family members. Administrators are in charge of whole schools. Gifted teachers are in charge of hundreds of kids if they're in multiple buildings. Classroom teachers are in charge of 30, 40, up to 150 kids, and so a lot of times you are the only one that is the advocate for your child. And it's not easy. Parenting high ability students is so multifaceted because of all of their differences, not only in the classroom, but those affective differences, such as that emotional intensity, or the sometimes they're really competitive, especially with siblings. And it's so complex because their brain works so much differently than others. It's really a hard thing. And it can be tiring. A lot of studies show that managing sibling relationships, lack of a community network for parents of gifted students, and difficulty explaining to others their sources of stress are really hard on a family unit and a family system. And too much stress can cause strain on all of our relationships, not only with teachers, but with one another as well. But that's where we get to the advocacy piece. So the more we can advocate for our children and the more appropriate services we get in schools, the better off our children are, and then the better all of our relationships are. I really love this quote because advocating is not just going into the school and asking for more. It really is researching and preparing and identifying what your child needs before you go to the school. And it also takes a great deal of tenacity. We know in some of our systems it can be hard. Teachers are stretched really thin, administrators are stretched really thin. But it's not, that doesn't always mean that we should give up. And so having that tenacity to push forward and continue to advocate can be really exhausting, especially for those of you who have possibly done it year after year after year. So the first thing I always like to start with as well is the chain of command. It can be really tempting, after years and years and years of advocating or years of trying to get what's best for your child, to immediately jump to a district level or an administrator level. But we always want to start with the classroom teacher. They are often willing to help do what's best, especially at the beginning of every year. Everything's fresh and new, and we're getting ready to lapse on this school year and be ready for a new one. And so they kind of start all over with a new teacher. And so that can be positive or negative depending on the relationship you had with your classroom teacher. After the classroom teacher, some districts have gifted teachers or gifted coordinators. Not all of our districts have those. Again, it's not required by law. So if you have a gifted teacher, though, they're the best resource. They can be a really great bridge between the classroom teacher and you. They have that knowledge of your child a little more intimately than the classroom teacher. And they also have that knowledge of how to help teachers differentiate in the classroom for your child. And so their knowledge can be really powerful if you maybe strike out with the classroom teacher, or you don't quite feel the classroom teacher's hitting what you need. Going to that gifted teacher to be a bridge between yourself and the classroom teacher is really powerful. And then some of our districts also have a gifted coordinator who is kind of over all of the HAL teachers in the district. And so the gifted coordinator is often the person who takes appeals. So if your child has been tested for high ability and they don't meet, or maybe you want to appeal a decision if your administration is not willing to accelerate your child, gifted coordinators a lot of times take those appeals. This is also where you ask about district policies. If you have a district coordinator, they're the one who should be able to give you that high ability learning plan. They can tell you all about the identification procedures and what services the district offers. If you're interested in starting a parent group at your district, I know some of our bigger districts have parent groups. I know Millard, Omaha Public Schools, Crete Public Schools, some of our bigger districts have parent groups. And if that's something you're interested in at your district, if you have a district coordinator, they are a really great resource to start a parent group. And they also are the ones you go to resolve a concern if the school has not been successful. So if you feel like you've exhausted all of your possible roads at the school, you go to the district level to talk to that coordinator who can hopefully help you sort that out. I got a quote from throughout this presentation, I'll be giving quotes from parents and educators. I elicited comments from them because they tell it best. That's what's going on in Nebraska, or we have another state represented in some of these as well. But these are really great stories. Like this one illustrates the power of collaborating with the classroom teacher. This parent discussed that they had a third grade student who was really great at math, and they allowed that student to move on after they learned their math multiplication facts in third grade. That classroom teacher moved that student on to 2- and 3-digit multiplication and then on to long division. So all of that can happen with great communication with the classroom teacher. So I really like this example of something that happened. I think this one is in Nebraska. Just going to the educator, talking to your teacher about challenging the student, and they can make these curriculum tweaks to help. Also, getting information from the classroom teachers is super important. This parent noted that their teacher thought that their son wasn't working up to their potential. While their progress reports were really great, the teacher saw that that child could do more and could put forth more effort. And they communicated that with the parents, and that's a lesson that student was able to learn in kindergarten, and put them on the right track, and kind of steer them away from maybe underachievement in the future. And so that two-way communication between the parents and the classroom teachers is so important. Another avenue is school administration. Again, if you've talked to the teacher and you've talked to the gifted coordinator, maybe you feel like you're not being successful, you can connect with the school administration. This is if you have a concern about how the gifted program is being implemented. The school administration, a lot of times, their job is to make sure all of the systems in the school are running smoothly. And so if there's a system that's not running the way it should be, it is up to them to kind of look into that for you. And a lot of times the school administration is the gatekeeper if you're looking to grade skip your child or accelerate them through a single subject or a whole grade. So a lot of times you will have to loop in the school administrator if you're seeking grade skipping opportunities for your student. We also have the school psychologist and counselor. These are the school psychologists. A lot of times if your student is given an individually administered IQ test, or a test for a disability, or a test for behavioral concerns, the school psychologist is the one who administers those tests. And so it's really important that you're aware of the identification procedures to know if you need to be in contact with a school psychologist or counselor. A counselor, the school counselors are also really important if you have a concern that your child may be high ability, but also have a disability. I know I've got some parents out there that your students are twice exceptional. So maybe they're gifted and they're on the autism spectrum, or maybe they're gifted and they have a specific learning disability. These are, you'll have to be in really close contact with the school psychologist and the school counselor in order to continue to make sure their extra needs are being met. This is an example from a parent who discussed going to an administrator when they wanted their child to be in a class that would challenge them. And so they went to the administrator to ask the principal of the school to put their child in a specific teacher's class that they knew would challenge that child. And in return, that child learned how to study and had that valuable skill through high school and college. And so this is another great example of going to school administrators and asking for what you need. And it can be really beneficial for your child to take that step. As I mentioned earlier, when it comes to going and talking to the school, it can be really intimidating. And so it's always super important to have a plan. The very first thing you want to do before going and talking to teachers is you want to prepare. So now that I've told you about the state laws, it's also really important that you understand your district policies. You want to make sure that you're asking for something that's within the scope of what your district can provide. And if your child has not been identified, you want to make sure you find out that process if that is something that you're seeking. It can be really frustrated if your child's needs are not being met, especially again with the growing strain on the teachers. It's vitally important that we are prepared to ask the teachers for exactly what you need for your child. Gather data and try to be objective. So collect documentation that your teacher sends home, such as reports or observations. Look for their work, look at their test scores, look at their report cards, look at comments that are being sent home. Gather all of this information so you have a really good idea of what your student needs. Also, talk to your child. Nobody knows better what your child needs than them. So having a conversation with them is really important. Ask them what would make school more interesting, or if they could change something about school, what would they change? Or when do they tune out? Or so asking specific questions of your child, because if you ask them what's wrong, they may just give you the blanket, I hate school, or I'm bored. And so asking your child specifically what would make their school experience better helps you know what you need to ask of the teachers. Also, know your goal when you go in. It can be really helpful to write down what you want to say and say it with specifics. Developing a description of what you want to happen is really great because it keeps you on track and it gives them a concrete idea of what you would like for your child. So the more specific, the better. On this slide, you'll see there is I've included a list, and I'm going to be putting the slides in the chat and also up on my website with this recording. There's this list of strategies and examples that you can work on when you are asking for what your child needs. So for example, if your child is learning things faster and gets bored halfway through the year or partway through the day, maybe you look at asking about if curriculum compacting would be an option for your child. So that's a strategy that eliminates previously mastered curriculum. So this list of strategies gives a really good overview of some ideas of things you could ask districts for in terms of servicing your child. A little later, we are also going to go over a really big list of resources that I'm giving you guys in order to help you do further research about some of these different topics. This is another really great example. This is of a teacher. This person was a teacher and an educator. And so this is a great example of knowing how to work with the staff at the school. And so this parent lamented that their fourth grader was really bored in class and the poor teacher had no idea what to do. A lot of times classroom teachers aren't intentionally leaving out high ability children or not challenging them. They just have so much on their plate and they don't always know what the child needs. And so this person who is also a teacher wants to let parents know that work with your GT teacher as much as possible. They work with the classroom teachers to help your students always have something to do and always have something to learn. So it is so important to make sure that if you have a gifted and talented teacher at your school, that you use that gifted and talented teacher. So after you have your plan, you have it written down, you're ready to go to a meeting with the school, start with the classroom teacher. It is also super important, if this is happening earlier in the year or in the mid-year, don't wait until parent-teacher conferences. Email that teacher and try to set up a meeting before parent-teacher conferences come around. We don't want it to be too late and the child to develop a negative attitude towards school, or there's no point in them sitting around bored waiting until parent-teacher conferences. So always feel like you can reach out to the teachers. We are always working for a consensus. While we have a really good idea of what our child needs, they have a really good idea of what can actually happen in the school. So we are all working together to figure out what is best for your individual child. So being open to ideas and being flexible is super important. Teachers are facing extraordinary demands right now, and sometimes it can be really hard for us to go in and ask for what we need for our children, especially as someone who was a teacher and is in education right now. It can be really kind of challenging or really hard when if a parent comes in and says, hey, like, you're not doing enough for my child. And so making sure that we are always expressing appreciation for what the teacher is doing. It's not lack of knowledge. We're all working towards the same goal. So when you sit down and you meet with, it may be just the classroom teacher, you may be meeting with a group of people. You may meet with the classroom teacher and the gifted talented teacher and the school administrator, or you may meet with a couple classroom teachers and the GT teacher. Whoever you meet with, by the end of the meeting, you want to make sure you have an actionable plan that is in writing. So if you agree that the teacher is going to provide curriculum compacting for the student, make sure that all of that is in writing and that there's an actionable plan for that. And then the next step should be clearly defined. So it could be something as simple as, at the beginning of the next unit, I will pre-test Bobby, and Bobby will not have to do the stuff that they have shown mastery of at the beginning of the unit. So something simple but is clearly defined, and also creating a timeline and setting a meeting for your next check-in. At that meeting with them, that initial meeting, you always want to set up a time to check in with them again so that we know that there is a time coming up to reflect and look back on if what we're doing is working. One of the really important pieces of advice that one of the parents I asked said is, you have to find out how to get the teacher on your side. We're all working on the same team. Everyone is there to support, and having a really positive relationship with that classroom teacher is so important. If we have a negative relationship, that can often be hard to go back and patch, and it can often be hard to get on the same team. So making sure that we're always keeping that open line of communication and making sure that that teacher is always on our side. So you've set a date to have a follow-up meeting. Say that's in 2 weeks, maybe it's a month. You come to the follow-up meeting and express your appreciation for their accommodations that they have provided so far. Again, they always are trying really hard. Everybody is working really hard to meet the needs of all students. So just always express your appreciation for their accommodations. Make sure there's follow through though on any agreed upon changes. While it may be difficult and it's a hard time and there's so much going on right now, We always, you want to be like flexible but firm at the same time, because you know what your child needs and you know what was agreed upon. So make sure to follow through and make sure the changes are being implemented. If the plan is not successful, revisit it. What were the problem areas? Is it time? Is it, was it a student behavior you saw come up? What were the sticking points? And brainstorm solutions together so that we can become successful moving forward. And at this follow-up meeting, if you feel, again, maybe this has happened a couple times, nothing is happening, you may have to appeal to a higher authority at that time. In terms of advocacy, you can also use these exact same steps with your child to promote self-advocacy. The sooner our students learn to ask for what they need in the classroom, the better it will be as they continue to build that in the future. So going through this plan, what they want to ask the classroom teacher for, especially maybe once they're, in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, they can ask, we can help them. We can sit down, help them write out what they want to ask the teacher for. Like, hey, I am feeling really bored in math. When I get finished, is there a way that we could do X, Y, or Z? So teaching the child to also ask for what they need helps alleviate some of the stress on the parents and also teaches them a very important skill. And sometimes it doesn't always work. I've shared a lot of really positive examples, but sometimes it doesn't always work. This parent noted that they would send puzzle books with their child because most of the day they were bored. And the teacher just didn't know how to challenge them. And so sometimes all you can do is make the best of it, especially in districts where maybe you don't have a gifted and talented coordinator, or maybe one teacher is teaching multiple grade levels, especially in some of our smaller districts. Sometimes all you can do is make the best of a difficult situation for now, but don't settle for it. Always continue to advocate and always continue to push forward. Another really positive note is that a parent shared with me that they relocated to Nebraska from another state in 2016, and their high ability children have just been flourishing, and they had previously not liked school, but the high ability educators in Nebraska are always so open and so willing to help our children that it really does help our kids. And so that was just another really positive thing that I wanted to share with you guys, and just thank you to all of the parents and all of the educators in Nebraska who are doing this amazing work. Additionally, again, I'm going to be sending you guys this PowerPoint, but the National Association for Gifted Children has put out, they have put out a classroom advocacy guide for parents. It's a template, and it shows you exactly how kind of goes over the steps we just went over, and in a little bit more detail. So things like discuss alternatives with your child, find samples of child's work, understand your child's strengths, and then it gives you a checklist for things to do during the meeting. And it gives a checklist for things to do after the meeting as well. So this is a really great resource that I like to hand parents if they are getting ready to meet with the school district. So you guys will, again, be getting these links so that you have a copy of this. It's a really great, easy thing to pull out. I'm going to pause for a second. I've been talking a lot. And so I want to know if any of you have any questions so far before I move forward with sharing some resources.
Hi, Cheyenne. It's Adrienne Bowen.
Hi.
Hi. What is the research behind grade skipping?
Yes, the research behind grade skipping is overwhelmingly positive. Pro grade skipping. There is a really great paper that came out in 2015 with some studies that showed not only did gifted students make academic growth, but they also made social and emotional growth when they're grade skipped, because it is better for those students to be with somebody who is closer to their cognitive age rather than their chronological age. And so that those interactions with peers who were on their level was more positive than some of the other experience they may have had.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. Yeah, great question.
Cheyenne,
Yes.
when you talk, kind of to piggyback off of that, when you talk about grade skipping and the fact that they do better when they're matched cognitively with other kids, does that matter at what age you'd start looking at that, or can they be as young as like first grade?
They can be as young as first grade, or even one form of acceleration is even like early entrance into kindergarten, or some students do like half a year of kindergarten, half a year of first grade. So it is never too young to look at those accelerative opportunities, especially developmentally. If they're in those younger years, it's a lot easier to go through, 10 grades with the people in the grades you skip into versus if you skip 7th grade and it's a little harder to integrate into those classes. So yeah, great question. These are really great questions. I will continue on, but feel free if you guys have questions to drop them in the chat. I have a lot of resources. That's another thing that I get a lot of requests for, is where do we go when we have questions, or where are some good places to look? And so I'm going to go over a couple of my favorites. So I have, for the Nebraska Department of Education, I have a web page. On the web page is resources. So there are archived webinars on here. The topics range from social emotional to district leadership, partnering with parents. So there's just probably 20 webinars on this website, high ability and perfectionism, that are about, they're usually anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour long, but they're all archived on this website. If any of you feel the need to read through the law is also on the website, if that's something that you're interested in. I put out a newsletter every month. The topics range from identification to curriculum. And so if you're interested in receiving it, they're usually research, just some kind of like research review or those different kinds of things, or state updates. Sarah, did you have a question?
Hi, I did. I don't know if it's appropriate for while you're sharing this particular part of what you're sharing, but I forgot I didn't put my hand up earlier before. Do you want me to wait till you have like a break? Okay, I have kind of like a funny question, and it's going to sound like a negative question, but it isn't meant to be. So I've noticed with our high ability learners that the more we focus on can she succeed, how can, I've noticed that there's starting to be a turn in a sort of she's missing out on how to serve her community more in a way, like now that she has this like great path ahead, but I don't see that she's having the patience it takes to really like live in society and be like, well, I have this gift. I need to also be tutoring students that are kind of not where I am, and like teach her the patience that it takes to, like live in the family of our society. Is there anything that you can, I don't know.
Yeah,
she's becoming a monster. No, I'm kidding. No, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's a really common thing. Again, especially before, how old is your child?
She's 11, the best age ever.
Yep. So at those where they're starting to figure it out, but the self-regulation doesn't really kick in until late high school. They have these, they develop asynchronously. And so their intellectual ability develops faster than their social and emotional abilities and their interpersonal skills. So a lot of times they have these really great ideas and these really big things, and they're go, but their like interpersonal and social skills haven't quite caught up with those. And that's really common. And we're going to talk about some resources for parents, but teaching tolerance and patience is so important. And when I talk to teachers about working with high ability students on patience with others, teaching what it's like to have learning differences, teaching how to help and those kinds of things. So I will be talking about that a little bit, and that is a totally common experience among other high ability parents. So great question.
Okay, I'm like, oh, help me. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about some websites and some books that I think might be helpful.
Cheyenne, I have a suggestion for that.
Yeah, please.
You could have her participate in social groups with either this guidance counselor or school psychologist, to where they would get a group of students together who are cognitively like your daughter, and those are things that they can work through together. So that's just a suggestion.
That's a great suggestion. Yeah, that's a great suggestion, having those kids together, because a lot of them are in the same place in terms of that weird developmental pattern, and so they understand one another, and so working through that together is a really great. Thank you for that suggestion, Adrian. That's great. Let me share my screen. Also on this website are parent and family resources. So all of the information, this event was on there. The recording for this event and the slides will also be on this this page when I am done. This is where I put other resources. There is a similar newsletter that I did about parent advocacy. There's a previous webinar that we did in the fall that somebody from the National Association Parent Board talked about our gifted students and anxiety. So there's a lot of great stuff on the High Ability website. Another resource specific to Nebraska is the Nebraska Association for Gifted. They are an affiliate of the National Association for Gifted Children. So they do an educator conference every year. This past year, they had parent sessions as well. So we had some really great keynote speakers who talked about some of their different books. There were also parent breakout sessions. I'm going to put the information in the slides. They're still selling access to these sessions for those who are interested in. I did a session there that was similar to this one. They also have resources for parents. They have a parent center on this website. And it's just different links to social and emotional issues, twice exceptional, parent tips. They also talk about legislative advocacy. They have a lobbyist that works in Washington for gifted and talented education. They have where you can find your Nebraska State School Board members, go here to find your state senators. So they have a lot of really great information on their website as well. They also have awards. They do scholarships for students. That's not on here. Oh, scholarships. They have scholarship opportunities for students going to college, but also for students PK through 11. And the scholarships can be used to send them to educational opportunities, like maybe they want to attend one of the Vanderbilt Program for Talented Youth online enrichment sessions during the summer, or they want to do something at a summer honors thing at UNL, or those different kinds of things. So they also have adult scholarships for Nebraska teachers wanting to gain their certification in gifted and talented education. So they've got a lot of really great stuff. So check out their website as well. I also have a big list of websites that I like. The National Association for Gifted Children has a parent center. So they have got this giant resources for parents section. They've got everything you could ever want. Motivation, planning for summer, Gifted Children's Bill of Rights, Is My Child Gifted, Twice Exceptional, starting a parent group. So they've got tons of information on the National Association website. They also have publications. They have a quarterly called Parenting for High Potential, so you can receive that in the mail. You can become a member of NAGC as a parent, and that gives you access to going to the conference every year, and it gives you access to some of these publications. So the National Association also has a lot of really great resources. They also have a whole web page just for parent advocacy. So it's kind of like that tip sheet that we went over earlier, and has other resources, communicating effectively with your child's school, connecting for high potential. So they've got a lot of really great resources. So I highly recommend checking out the National Association. They are just the leaders in the field. And so I highly recommend checking that out. Some other really great ones, Supporting the Emotional Needs of Gifted Children parent page. This one is specifically about those things like anxiety, developing tolerance, patience, interpersonal skills, organizational skills. They have an entire backlog of articles and videos. Self-advocacy, meditation for gifted students, supporting musically talented gifted students. So they've just got a ton of resources for parents as well. These, again, you can also become a member of this. They send out newsletters, and they also do a conference and webinars. So becoming a member of the Supporting Emotional Needs of Gifted Students also gets you access to a lot of things. Here's another advocacy one. This is where I took a lot of things from today. Talking about giftedness, that's often, so again, there's just, I could keep going all day on this one. A lot of great resources about how to help your child through those, navigate those social waters, and how to help them cope with some of those overexcitabilities, or how to account for some of those different behaviors that come specifically from being a gifted child. Also down here, I've got the Bell and Blank Center at the University of Iowa. Just across over there in Iowa City, the Gifted and Talented Education Department at the University of Iowa is one of the top in the world, and we're lucky to have them really close. So they have summer programs for students, for those willing to travel to Iowa. I don't know if they're doing them virtually anymore. They used to because of COVID. They have got 7th and 8th grade programs. They've got high school programs, 2 to 8 programs. So they're really a great resource. They also have a counseling center at Bell and Blank. So that's where all of the counselors who are going to go into gifted education do their training. So they also have a lot of really great opportunities at the University of Iowa as well. Vanderbilt Programs for Talented Youth is similar. These are summer programs for gifted students. They have to submit test scores, so it really is only for students who are cognitively similar. And they have options for online experiences. It used to be only in person, but if you want to take a week's vacation to Nashville, Tennessee, it's a lot of fun. I used to work here and I loved it, but they also have online opportunities. They also have parent sessions and things like that. Vanderbilt University is also one of the top in the world for gifted education, so that is super exciting. And similarly for the Renzulli Center for Giftedness, and that's at the University of Connecticut, and they've got a lot of really great resources as well. I'm going to go ahead while I'm thinking about it and drop these slides in the chat so you guys can click around. Some of my favorite books for parents. A Parent's Guide to Gifted Children is a must read. It is just all encompassing, everything you need to know about parenting your gifted child. It's a really great book. It won the National Association for Gifted Children Award a couple of years ago. It's really helpful. Emotional Intensity in Gifted Students by Christine Fonseca, helping those kids cope with explosive feelings. Again, that's that idea of how do we help them cope with all of the things going on in their brain and this idea of feeling really intense all the time. Smart but scattered is really great for helping students build those executive functioning skills, those interpersonal skills. How do we talk to people? Also, the Gifted Teen Survival Guide is actually for students, and it helps them understand cognitively how their brain works so that they can be ready and prepared to meet some of those different challenges. There's also a link here that has, it's from the Davidson Institute. I think it's like over 50 books for gifted parents, and they range from specific, twice exceptional, or just about specific issues to some of these more general books. But these are all available on Amazon, and I highly recommend. They are super great. Finally, I wanted to leave you with this one last quote that I got from a parent in terms of advocating for your child. Speak up and ask HAL educators and teachers what can be done to assist your child so they're not bored and so that they can expand their learning. They can provide assistance beyond the scope of voicing parent concerns. And so one piece of advice they had at the end is just don't give up. It can feel a lot of times like we're fighting an uphill battle when we're trying to work within a school system or we're trying to work within laws or legislation. And so it can feel really daunting, but don't give up. Your child is counting on you, and you all are doing just really great things. And thank you so much for attending this evening. My email is cheyenne.meadows@nebraska.gov. This recording will be up on my website, as well as a copy of the slide deck. If you did not get to see all of it, or if you would like to go back and watch any of it again, it will be up. So thank you so much. And if you have any questions, I will be on for a few more minutes and take those. So thank you.
Cheyenne, I also recommend any parent to spend a day in the classroom with the child so you could see how academically, how the teacher's teaching, the assignments they're given, if it is differentiated. And it's not for the purpose of like a gotcha. It's just so you can work more collaboratively with the teacher on how to meet your child's needs.
Yes, and Adrienne is an administrator. She's a principal up north in Niobrara Public Schools. So she brings a really great perspective to this, and that is a great idea. And like she said, it's not a gotcha, it's just to understand what's going on in the classroom. Now,
that's not to guarantee a teacher wouldn't feel that way, but yeah. If you build a relationship with them, it'll be fine.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you, Cheyenne. This has been great.
Good. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to stop recording. So thank you guys so much for taking your evening to come to this. I really appreciate it. And if you need anything, always feel free to reach out to me via email. I love hearing from parents, so feel free to reach out.